Hey everybody, what's up? Chad Wesley Smith here for Juggernaut Training Systems. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how to create an annual plan, really long-term strategy using different phases of training, different styles of training. So I'm going to be talking specifically about utilizing the Juggernaut AI, Powerbuilding, Powerlifting, and Bridge systems. But this is not an exclusive idea to Juggernaut AI. It's just one way that you could utilize it, but the concepts can go for pretty much whatever you're doing. So the reason that this is important is that we're trying to strike this balance between two important concepts in training. And that is directed adaptation, meaning that if you want to get better at something, you need to do that specific thing. In the case of this video, the sport of powerlifting. If you want to improve at the sport of powerlifting, you need to do things that are specific to powerlifting. Specificity, our number one principle and scientific principles of strength training, meaning that you're developing the underlying systems of success for that sport. In powerlifting, bigger muscles, more force producing muscles, better technique. And then the other side of this sort of same coin is adaptive resistance, that we're trying to avoid adaptive resistance, meaning that the longer you do the same thing, the less result it's going to produce. And creating a long-term strategy or an annual plan for yourself and athletes that you work with is not only going to be important to helping them satisfy directed adaptation and avoid adaptive resistance from just a physical standpoint, but it's also going to help keep them healthier. It's going to help keep them more mentally engaged in their training, avoiding burnout. As I look back at my powerlifting career, I think one of the great mistakes I made was trying to go like one meet training cycle into another meet training cycle, long periods of highly specific training, specific in the sort of narrow sense of training that in that moment is geared towards improving my 1 rep maximum in the squat, bench, and deadlift, rather than taking a broader view of our definition of specificity, developing the underlying systems of success. Part of being able to develop those underlying systems of success is being healthy and wanting to do the more specific training for competitive powerlifting. So I'm going to take you through a way that you could set up a full year of training, how to split up those blocks, and hopefully it has some valuable ideas and lessons for you to either utilize within the Juggernaut AI app or with whatever you're doing with your own training. So the schedule we're going to look to create here is going to be competing 3 times over the course of 1 year. This is a schedule that Marissa, Inda, and I used for about 5 years straight, and it worked out pretty conveniently for her to early in the year, typically the first weekend of March, compete at the Arnold, big showcase meet for USAPL lifters. Then later in late June to compete at IPF Worlds, of course that really being the focus of our year, and then later on in the year again, typically like mid to late October, early November, to compete at USAPL Nationals to with the objective of earning her spot on the world team the next year. And she's doing this at some of the biggest meets in the world. If you're in that same situation, awesome. But you can also just follow this framework with local meets, with whatever level you're competing at, and find that sort of, find a meet in March, find a meet in June, July, find a meet in October or November, and follow this type of schedule. 2 to 3 times a year competing, I think, tends to be good. The bigger you are, the stronger you are, the more stressful competing is going to be on you physically. So you may have to spread it out more, other extenuating circumstances, school, work, family, all sorts of things. So I'm going to talk about 3 meets a year. Take that information as you will. You could do it for 2 meets a year. You could do it for 1 meet a year. So if we're looking at 3 meets over the course of 1 year, that gives us 17.33 weeks per meet if they were spread out perfectly throughout the year. So that gives us 17.33 weeks dedicated to each meet. So as we begin the year, January 1st, in there with the New Year resolutioner crowd, that whole thing, we're about 12 weeks away from this, mid-March meet. And that's a simple decision to make. 12 weeks away, you're probably just going to do powerlifting training. So that might, it could be hypertrophy, strength peaking, maybe 2 strength blocks and a peaking block. That's a topic for a different video. We have plenty of information on how to decide which, what proportion and length of phases are appropriate for you. But we're going to start the year off with 12 weeks of powerlifting. And then you're going to compete. Let's call that early March. So you compete in early March and you lift great, hopefully, and ideally you come out of that meet very healthy, and you're probably chomping at the bit, so excited and pumped up on powerlifting that you want to just jump back into another training cycle. And this is I think one of the most common downfalls of younger, newer to powerlifting, super enthusiastic lifters is your enthusiasm sort of dooms you. Whereas you get farther along and maybe you've accumulated some injuries, or you're really strong and the meets are they're beating you up, or there's travel involved and just the mental and emotional stress of competing as well. Sometimes the older lifters, they're not looking to turn around and hop right back into a hypertrophy block on a Monday after they competed on Saturday. But as a newer lifter, as a more beginner powerlifter, you might be having that inclination. And what I need you to do is to resist that urge and take that time and go into, let's say, at minimum 3 weeks up to probably 6 weeks of more general training. So in the Juggernaut AI app, we suggest that you use a bridge block for that. And the bridge is submaximal training, alternating heavier days, lighter days. It's a lot more variation. It's fairly high frequency, like benching, if you're training 4 times a week, you're gonna be benching 4 times a week, but that's typically gonna be with 4 different bench variations. Squatting probably 3 times a week with 3 different squat variations, pulling twice a week with 2 different deadlift variations. Quite a bit of accessory work, some strongman type of training, some controlled rest periods, things that are gonna challenge you in new ways, that's gonna develop some general work capacity, some general athleticism. If there's any sort of overuse injuries that could develop from too much competition squat, bench, or deadlift, it's going to help negate those. It's going to do a lot of positive things for you. You could also take this time, and I would particularly encourage you towards a bridge if you are feeling kind of beat up coming out of that meet, which the bigger and stronger and more successful in powerlifting you tend to be, sort of the more beat up you're going to be coming out of a meet. Even if you're not hurt or injured, you're also probably not 100% healthy. So if that is you, then hop on a bridge. If you do feel very healthy, then you could opt for maybe some power building training. And defining power building, that is a debate in and of itself, I think. But essentially what we're looking at with the Juggernaut AI power building is a balanced development towards maximal strength in the power lifts, in the squat, bench, and deadlift, and more physique-based training. And you can choose your proportion of that from 70 to 30 bias towards powerlifting, 60-40, 50-50, 40-60, or 30-70 bias towards bodybuilding style training, more accessory work and isolation exercises, which if your goal is powerlifting, then that is inherently less specific, inherently more general for you. So if you feel healthy, choosing a 50-50 powerlifting to bodybuilding, or maybe all the way towards 30-70 in favor of bodybuilding, can be a good decision for you. So we're going to take a 3 to 6 week phase here of bridge or PB. This is going to be enough time that if you are someone who is a little bit more experienced and can feel kind of potentially a little bit burnout right after a meet, this is going to give you enough time of variety in your training to start to probably miss squat, bench, and deadlift in the more competitive sense. It's going to give you plenty of time to get healthy, deal with any nagging injuries or lingering issues that could have developed through the previous training cycle, and sort of refresh you both in a mental sense and a physical sense of avoiding adaptive resistance as we head in to the next powerlifting cycle, which is, depending on the length of your bridge or power building block here, going to be 9 to 12 weeks of PL, powerlifting. How long should that be? A lot of different factors that are going to go into that, but typically the longer you've been lifting, the stronger you are, the shorter total specific meet training cycle you need to do. In what I'm laying out here, we're training 52 weeks a year, but it's not all specifically powerlifting training. We're kind of getting into semantics with that, but when I'm referring to powerlifting, I mean create powerlifting program in the Juggernaut AI app, hit start training, something that is pointed at a specific meet, where the bridge or the power building is part of the greater goal of developing as a powerlifter, but is you're not trying to do a powerlifting meet at the end of that specific training block. So if you're stronger, you're more experienced, maybe 9 or 10 week cycle, because those stronger, more experienced lifters, they're going to retain their fitness better. They don't need quite as many sessions to get their technique where they need it to be, just because they have so many more reps under their belt. Where if you're a little bit less experienced, tending towards the longer side of things, 11, 12 weeks, maybe a better option. I do not suggest doing a dedicated, I am getting ready for this meet, I am starting to train for this meet, everything that comes along with that of phasic dieting, of just that extra level of mental engagement that being really successful as a lifter requires. I wouldn't suggest doing that longer than 16, maybe 20 weeks, but that 9 to 12 weeks, maybe up to 15 or 16 weeks tends to be the sweet spot. But in this example, we're going to go 9 to 12 weeks, depending on, if you do 3 weeks of bridge, then you're going to be 12 weeks of powerlifting, and that's probably more appropriate for less experienced lifters. More experienced, you're going to need the longer, less specific training and the shorter specific training. And then we're going to compete in mid-July, let's say. So of course, not exact meet dates here. I don't know what your particular schedule is going to look like, but we compete again, and coming off of this, hopefully you're healthy, might be a little bit beat up, might need a little bit of a mental break. A lot of different options here. Something else I want to mention is the use of a transition week. Let's say you're trying to make a quick turnaround and go right from one meet into another hypertrophy block or into power building, where you're doing sets of 8, sets of 10. But for the last 5 weeks, you've been either in a peaking phase where you're doing singles, doubles, and triples, in a taper where you're doing even a lower volume of singles, doubles, and triples, or competing at a meet where you're only doing singles. Going right back in and doing sets of 10, you are going to get crushed. So taking a week or two of what we call transition weeks can help with that. So a transition week would be, let's say you're trying to start hypertrophy by doing 4 sets of 8 at 350 pounds. And if you're going to do 2 transition weeks, if 4 sets of 8 at 350 is where you want to start, maybe the first transition week, 4 sets of 4 at 350. The second transition week, 4 sets of 6 at 350, where neither of, the 4 sets of 4 at 350 should feel pretty easy. It's not that dissimilar to what you were doing in your peaking block. 4 sets of 6, building your work capacity back up a little bit to create a smooth transition into the new hypertrophy block or power building, whatever it may be. So this could be a time where we do 1 to 2 transition weeks before entering into another general phase. That could be maybe 4 to 8 weeks of a bridge or power building program. As we're later in our annual plan here, your general fitness should be higher. So you can probably tend towards a even shorter meet prep for your last meet of the calendar year. So we're gonna go 4 to 8 weeks of PB or bridge. And then we're going to complement that with 8 to 10 week specific preparation for your powerlifting meet. Finally, our last meet of the year, we're going to compete in, let's say, just November. Cool handwriting. So that's going to take you through pretty much a whole year of training, but Chad, this is only in November. What do I do the rest of the year? Let's say you compete mid-November, you have six weeks left in the calendar year. That's 6 weeks that are filled with Thanksgiving, Christmas. If you've got kids, they're getting out of school. If you're in school, you're out on Christmas break, or you have, first semester finals. There's just a lot going on. There's probably, potentially some travel mixed in with that. Those last 6 weeks of the year, do you want to just be like, fuck it, I'm just going to do whatever I want? Probably not. Not if you're serious about maximizing your performance. But this would be a great time for those last 6 weeks of the year, depending on how you feel. If you're a little beat up or just high stress with that time of the year, hop on a bridge program. Maybe you're only training 3 days a week. Whatever it is, you're getting some quality work done. If you do feel healthy, you have more time on your hands, that could be another fun time for you to do some power building. Playing around with the balance between powerlifting and bodybuilding in the power building system. If it's closer to a meet, skewing it towards more powerlifting. If it's further away from a meet, skewing it towards more bodybuilding, to give yourself that physical and mental break to avoid adaptive resistance. And this is a repeatable idea year after year after year. Like I said, we did this pretty much 5 years in a row for Marissa, a schedule very, very similar to this. Times where she wasn't doing barbell squatting or deadlifting, where it was more leg press and machine-based training, always using the bridge programs. I cannot stress enough to you Juggernaut AI users how good you will, how much good you will do for yourself by using the bridge. There's a reason that Garrett and Marissa are like bridge after bridge after bridge. They're doing a lot of that training and lifting very, very heavy. So I would take their lead and get into more of that yourself. So hopefully this gave you some good ideas about how you can set up a year's worth of competitions, how you can maximize your performance at each one while not burning yourself out. If you're using the Juggernaut AI app, it will be pretty simple to get into doing something like this. If you're not using the app, what are you doing? But in all seriousness, these ideas would still hold true for you. You want to have periods of less specific training, more general, just things that you like doing that aren't squat, bench, and deadlift in their competition form. So check out juggernautai.app and try the Juggernaut AI app for 2 weeks for free. You can start doing some training like this. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, all that good stuff. jtsstrength.com for more information. We got so many videos on this channel that if you're, there's something that I talked about that you aren't quite sure what it was, just type it in with Juggernaut and we probably have a video for that to answer your question, maybe in more depth than you're actually interested in knowing. So thanks for watching. See you next time.